The blood-soaked sun descended behind the distant mountains as Olivia Zimmerman stumbled along the railroad tracks, her tattered dress clinging to her frail body. Wyoming Territory, 1878. A land of promise and peril. Her parched lips cracked as she tried to swallow, the summer heat relentless even as evening approached. The distant whistle of a train echoed across the plains, but Olivia knew it wouldn't arrive for hours. By then, she feared, it would be too late. 3 days without proper water, fleeing from the man who had promised her safety but delivered only betrayal. The wound in her side had stopped bleeding. But the fever that followed burned through her like wildfire. The vast emptiness of the frontier stretched before her, indifferent to her suffering. Her vision blurred, the steel rails beneath her feet seeming to ripple like water. With each step, her strength ebbed away like the last rays of sunlight. Finally, her legs buckled beneath her, and she collapsed beside the tracks, her cheek pressed against the rough wooden tie. As consciousness slipped away, she thought she heard hoofbeats approaching, but she'd been fooled by hallucinations before. Preston Ryder guided his horse along the railroad tracks as the day's heat began to wane. The rancher had spent 3 days tracking a small herd of strays, and he was eager to return to his modest homestead before nightfall. Dust clung to his weather-beaten face, and his eyes squinted beneath the brim of his worn Stetson. The sight of something unusual beside the tracks caught his attention. At first, he thought it might be a bundle of discarded clothing, but as he drew closer, he realized it was a woman. He dismounted quickly, his spurs jingling as his boots hit the ground. "Madam," he called, approaching cautiously. When she didn't respond, he knelt beside her, noting the dried blood on her dress and the unhealthy flush of her skin. She was beautiful, despite her condition, with auburn hair that had come loose from its pins and delicate features now strained with suffering. Gently he turned her onto her back, checking for signs of life. Relief washed over him when he felt the faint flutter of her pulse. Without hesitation, he slid one arm beneath her knees and the other around her shoulders, lifting her as if she weighed nothing. Her eyelids fluttered momentarily, revealing a glimpse of deep green irises clouded with confusion and fear. "Safe now," Preston whispered, his voice rough yet gentle. "I've got you." He carried her to his horse, somehow managing to mount while still holding her securely. He settled her across his lap, cradling her against his chest as he turned his mount toward home. The woman's head rested against his shoulder, her breath coming in shallow gasps that worried him deeply. Preston's ranch was modest compared to some in the territory, a sturdy 2-room cabin, a small barn, and about 100 acres of decent grazing land. He'd built it all himself over the past 5 years, and while it wasn't much, it was his. Now, as he approached the cabin with the unconscious woman in his arms, he felt an unfamiliar sense of urgency. Inside, he laid her gently on his bed, then hurried to light the lamp and stoke the banked fire in the stove. The woman hadn't stirred, and in the lamplight, he could see how grave her condition truly was. Her dress was torn at the side, revealing a wound that had been crudely bandaged with a strip of fabric now stiff with dried blood. Preston retrieved his medical supplies, limited but essential for frontier living, and set a pot of water to boil. As the water heated, he hesitated, knowing he needed to examine her wound properly, but uncomfortable with the intimacy that would require. Finally, practicality won out. He carefully cut away the bloodied fabric around the wound, preserving her modesty as best he could. The injury wasn't from a bullet as he'd first feared, but rather a deep gash that had become infected. After cleaning the wound with boiled water and whiskey, he applied a poultice of herbs he'd learned to use from an old trapper who'd once saved his life. Then he bandaged her properly and covered her with a clean blanket. Throughout the night, Preston sat beside the bed, periodically placing a cool cloth on her forehead to combat the fever. He spooned water between her lips whenever she seemed capable of swallowing. As dawn approached, her fever broke, and she fell into a more peaceful sleep. Preston moved to his chair by the fireplace, intending to rest for just a moment. Exhaustion quickly claimed him. The sound of movement woke him hours later. Sunlight streamed through the cabin's single window, and Preston opened his eyes to find the woman sitting up in bed, regarding him with a mixture of confusion and wariness. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Preston stood slowly, not wanting to startle her. My ranch, about 10 miles east of Cottonwood Springs. Found you collapsed beside the railroad tracks yesterday evening. You carried me?" Her hand went to the bandage at her side. "Yes, madam. You were in a bad way. That wound was festering." He moved to the stove, pouring a cup of coffee from the pot he'd prepared earlier. "Name's Preston Ryder." "Olivia Zimmerman," she replied after a moment's hesitation. She accepted the coffee with slightly trembling hands. "Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Ryder." "Just Preston, please." He poured himself a cup and sat at the small table near the bed. "If you don't mind my asking, what happened to you, Miss Zimmerman?" Olivia's gaze fell to the steaming cup in her hands. "It's a long story." "I've got time." Preston's voice was gentle, with no hint of demand. After taking a sip of coffee, Olivia began her tale. She'd come west from Philadelphia 3 months ago to take a position as a school teacher in Cottonwood Springs. The journey had nearly depleted her savings, but the promise of a new start had sustained her. Upon arrival, she'd discovered the position had been given to someone else, the school board chairman's niece. Stranded with little money and no prospects, she'd taken work as a housekeeper for Julius Blackwell, a businessman who owned several properties in the growing town. "He seemed respectable at first," she explained, her voice hollow. "But his intentions, they weren't honorable. When I refused his advances, he became angry." Her hand trembled, spilling a few drops of coffee onto the blanket. "3 nights ago, he cornered me in the kitchen. I grabbed a knife to defend myself, but in the struggle, I was the one who got cut." Preston's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, letting her continue. "I fled that night with nothing but the clothes I'm wearing. I've been walking, hiding during the day, moving at night. I was trying to reach the next town when—" She looked up at him. "When you found me." "This Blackwell? He didn't come after you?" Preston asked. "I don't know. I was so afraid he might." Olivia's eyes filled with tears that she quickly blinked away. "I have nowhere to go, no money, no one who knows me here." Preston rose and moved to the window, looking out at his land while considering her situation. "You're welcome to stay here until you're well enough to travel," he said finally. "It's not much, but you'll be safe." "I couldn't impose. It's no imposition." He turned to face her. "I've got a spare bedroll. I'll sleep in the barn." Olivia's expression softened with gratitude. "Thank you, Preston. I don't know how I'll ever repay your kindness." "No need," he said simply. "Rest now. I'll fix us something to eat." The next few days established a cautious routine. Preston tended to his ranch work during the day, while Olivia recovered her strength. Her fever didn't return, and the wound began to heal cleanly. By the 4th day, she was insisting on helping with household tasks, despite Preston's objections. "I'm not an invalid," she declared, taking the broom from where it stood in the corner. "And I can't just lie in your bed while you sleep in the barn and do all the work." Preston, who had just returned from checking his cattle, removed his hat and wiped his brow. "You still need to heal, Miss Zimmerman." "Olivia," she corrected him with a small smile, "and I'm much better, thanks to your care. Please, let me contribute in some way." He conceded with a nod, recognizing the pride in her stance. That evening, she insisted on preparing supper, though he remained nearby in case she needed assistance. The simple meal of beans, biscuits, and dried beef was the best he'd eaten in months. Not because of any special ingredients, but because of the company. As they ate, Preston found himself watching Olivia more than he intended. The color had returned to her cheeks, and her green eyes had lost the clouded look of fever. Her auburn hair was neatly braided, though a few stubborn tendrils framed her face. He caught himself wondering what it would look like loose around her shoulders, then quickly banished the thought. "Tell me about your ranch," Olivia said, breaking the comfortable silence. Preston described how he'd come to Wyoming 5 years earlier, with little more than his horse, his rifle, and a dream of land to call his own. He'd worked for larger ranches, saving every penny until he could purchase this modest plot. Now he ran about 60 head of cattle, enough to make a living, if not a fortune. "It must be lonely out here," Olivia observed. Preston shrugged. "Got used to it, I suppose. After the war, crowds didn't sit well with me anymore." "You fought in the war?" Olivia's expression held genuine interest, rather than the pity he'd grown to dislike. "Union cavalry. Saw things I'd rather forget." He rarely spoke of those days, but something about Olivia made it easier. Came west afterward, like a lot of men. Needed open sky above me. Olivia nodded, understanding in her eyes. My father never came home from Gettysburg. My mother passed 2 winters ago. I thought teaching out west might be a fresh start. A shadow crossed her face. I was naive. Not naive, Preston countered. Brave. Takes courage to leave everything familiar behind. A flush crept up Olivia's neck at his words. She busied herself with clearing the plates, but Preston noticed the slight smile that curved her lips. That night, as Preston settled into his bedroll in the barn, listening to the soft nickering of his horse and the distant howl of a coyote, he found himself thinking of Olivia's smile. It had been a long time since he'd shared meals and conversation with anyone, longer still since that anyone had been a woman. He told himself his interest was merely concern for her well-being, but a small voice in his mind suggested otherwise. A week passed, then another. Olivia's wound healed well, leaving only a thin scar on her side. She insisted on taking over the cooking and cleaning, freeing Preston to focus on his ranch work. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch, watching the sunset, paint the vast Wyoming sky in shades of orange and purple. Their conversations grew deeper, more personal. Preston told her about his childhood in Ohio, his difficult relationship with his father, and his dreams for expanding the ranch someday. Olivia shared stories of her life in Philadelphia, her love of books, and her hope of someday becoming a teacher. Why didn't you try for another teaching position? Preston asked one evening as they sat side by side on the porch steps. Olivia sighed, her fingers idly tracing patterns on her skirt. After what happened with Blackwell, I was afraid. Afraid he might find me, afraid that no one would believe my word against his. He's an influential man in Cottonwood Springs. She looked up at the emerging stars. I didn't know who I could trust. You can trust me, Preston said quietly. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Olivia's breath caught, and for a moment, Preston thought he might reach for her hand. Instead, he stood abruptly. Getting late. Should check on that new calf before turning in. Olivia nodded, disappointment flickering across her face so quickly he almost missed it. Of course. Good night, Preston. As he walked to the barn, Preston silently berated himself. He was developing feelings for Olivia, that much he couldn't deny. But she was vulnerable, dependent on him for shelter and protection. Taking advantage of that would make him no better than Blackwell. Besides, once she was fully recovered, she would likely want to move on, find a proper town with proper people, not spend her life on a remote ranch with a solitary cowboy. The following day brought an unexpected visitor. Preston was mending a fence when he spotted a rider approaching from the direction of Cottonwood Springs. He straightened, instinctively reaching for the rifle propped against the fence post. As the rider drew closer, Preston recognized Sheriff Thomas Jenkins, a fair man he'd dealt with occasionally when selling cattle in town. Afternoon, Ryder, Jenkins called, reining in his horse. Sheriff. Preston nodded in greeting, his hand still near his rifle. What brings you out this way? Jenkins dismounted, his weathered face solemn. Looking for someone. Young woman, auburn hair, went missing from town about 3 weeks back. Name's Olivia Zimmerman. Preston's expression revealed nothing. Any particular reason you're looking here? Blackwell said she might have headed east. Said she took some valuables when she left. The sheriff's eyes narrowed slightly. You haven't seen anyone matching that description, have you? Before Preston could answer, he caught sight of Olivia standing in the doorway of the cabin, watching them. The sheriff followed his gaze and spotted her. Miss Zimmerman, I presume? Jenkins called. Olivia stepped forward, her chin raised despite the fear evident in her eyes. Yes, Sheriff. I'm Olivia Zimmerman. Preston moved to stand beside her, his presence offering silent support. Mr. Blackwell has reported some items missing from his home. Says you took them when you left his employment. That's a lie, Olivia replied firmly. I took nothing but the clothes I was wearing. I left because he attacked me. She gestured to her side. He gave me this when I defended myself. Jenkins studied her for a long moment. That's not the story I heard. It's the truth, Preston interjected. I found her collapsed beside the railroad tracks, injured and fevered. Been nursing her back to health these past weeks. The sheriff sighed, removing his hat to wipe his brow. Blackwell's got influence in town. but between us, I've had my doubts about him for some time. Not the first young woman to leave his employment under questionable circumstances. He replaced his hat. Still, I need to investigate the claim. She hasn't stolen anything, Preston insisted, and she's not going back to Cottonwood Springs. Jenkins raised an eyebrow at Preston's protective tone. That her decision or yours, Ryder? Mine, Olivia stated clearly. Sheriff, I understand you have a duty to perform, but I swear on my father's grave that I took nothing from Mr. Blackwell's house. I fled for my safety, nothing more. The sheriff looked between them, then nodded slowly. I believe you, Miss Zimmerman. But Blackwell won't let this go easily. He seemed unusually determined to find you. A chill ran down Preston's spine. What are you saying, Sheriff? I'm saying be careful. Blackwell's not above hiring men to do his dirty work. Jenkins mounted his horse. I'll report that I couldn't find any trace of you, Miss Zimmerman. That should buy you some time. But you might want to consider moving on, further from his reach. After the sheriff departed, Olivia sank onto the porch steps, her face pale. He'll come for me, won't he? Preston sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. Not if I have anything to say about it. Preston, I can't put you in danger. The sheriff's right I should leave. And go where? He challenged. No, the safest place for you is right here. I can protect you. Olivia turned to him, her eyes searching his face. Why would you do that? You barely know me. Preston hesitated, then answered honestly. I know enough. That evening, as they ate supper in subdued silence, Preston made a decision. I'm riding into Silver Creek tomorrow, he announced. Silver Creek was a smaller settlement about 20 miles in the opposite direction from Cottonwood Springs. What for? Olivia asked. Supplies and information. Need to know more about this Blackwell character? Preston set down his fork. You'll stay here. Keep the doors locked, and there's a shotgun in the cupboard if you need it. Olivia nodded, though anxiety creased her brow. Be careful, Preston. If Blackwell discovers you're helping me, I can handle myself, he assured her. I'll be back before sundown tomorrow. That night, as Preston prepared for bed in the barn, the door creaked open. Olivia stood in the doorway, a lantern in her hand, her hair loose around her shoulders, just as he'd imagined it. I couldn't sleep, she said softly. I keep thinking about tomorrow, about you riding into town alone. Preston stood, acutely aware that he was wearing only his trousers. I'll be fine, Olivia. She stepped closer, setting the lantern on a barrel. You've done so much for me, risked so much. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. You don't need to repay me, he said, his voice rougher than he intended. What if I want to? Her eyes met his, filled with a determination that took his breath away. Preston swallowed hard. Olivia, you don't owe me anything, especially not that. Understanding dawned in her eyes, followed by a flash of hurt. You think I'm offering myself out of obligation? Aren't you? No. She moved closer still, until he could smell the faint lavender scent of her hair. I'm here because I haven't felt safe in a very long time. Not until you found me. Not until you whispered those words to me. What words? He asked, though he remembered perfectly. Safe now, she quoted softly. And for the first time in years, I believed it. Because of you. Preston's resolve weakened. Olivia, I'm not asking for promises, she interrupted. I don't want to be alone tonight, and I don't think you do either. His hand rose of its own accord, fingers gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. No, he admitted, I don't. When their lips met, it was gentle at first, a question rather than a demand. But as Olivia's arms wound around his neck, the kiss deepened, years of loneliness dissolving in the warmth between them. Preston lifted her, his arms secure around her waist, and carried her to his bedroll. That night, under the stars visible through the barn's loft window, they found comfort in each other's arms. Their lovemaking was tender yet passionate, a revelation of feelings neither had dared to acknowledge fully. Afterward, as Olivia lay curled against his side, her head resting on his chest, Preston felt a peace he hadn't known since before the war. I should go back to the cabin, Olivia murmured sleepily. It wouldn't be proper. Preston tightened his arm around her. Stay. Just tonight. She did. Dawn found them still entwined, the first light of day casting a golden glow through the barn's weathered boards. Preston woke first, watching Olivia sleep for a few precious moments before gently rousing her. I need to get ready to ride, he whispered, kissing her forehead. Olivia nodded, her eyes still heavy with sleep. They dressed in companionable silence, neither quite ready to discuss what had transpired between them. As they walked back to the cabin, Preston's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. After a quick breakfast, Preston prepared for his journey to Silver Creek. He checked his pistol, then strapped on his gun belt. I meant what I said about the shotgun, he told Olivia as he saddled his horse. Anyone comes that isn't me, you don't hesitate. I won't, she promised, her expression serious. Just come back safely. Preston mounted, looking down at her with a softness in his eyes that would have surprised anyone who knew him before. I will. Lock the doors behind me. The ride to Silver Creek took most of the morning. The town was smaller than Cottonwood Springs, but bustling with activity miners from the nearby hills, farmers bringing produce to market, and the usual assortment of frontier characters. Preston's first stop was the general store, where he purchased supplies they needed at the ranch. As the shopkeeper tallied his purchases, Preston casually inquired about Julius Blackwell. Blackwell? The shopkeeper, an older man named Miller, frowned. Owns half of Cottonwood Springs these days. Started with a saloon, then bought the hotel. Now he's got his fingers in most businesses there. Honest businessman? Preston asked, counting out coins for his purchases. Miller snorted. Depends who you ask. Some say he's brought prosperity. Others say he's brought nothing but trouble. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. Had a daughter of a friend work for him. Came back changed, wouldn't talk about what happened. Left the territory soon after. Preston's jaw tightened. Man like that usually has enemies. Sure does, but he's also got hired guns keeping those enemies at a distance. Miller wrapped Preston's purchases in brown paper. Why the interest, Ryder? You thinking of doing business with him? Just heard the name, Preston replied vaguely. Wanted to know what kind of man he is. The kind best avoided, Miller advised, handing over the packages. Preston's next stop was the Silver Creek Saloon, where he hoped to gather more information in the loose-tongued atmosphere. He ordered a whiskey and found a seat at a corner table, listening more than talking. It didn't take long to hear Blackwell's name mentioned. Two men at a nearby table were discussing cattle prices, when one mentioned selling to a buyer working for Blackwell. Man's expanding into ranching now, the older of the two said. Offering good prices too, better than the buyers from Cheyenne. Heard he's looking for a specific piece of land, the other replied. East of Cottonwood Springs. Some small-time rancher won't sell, so Blackwell's trying to buy up everything around him. Preston's blood ran cold. East of Cottonwood Springs, exactly where his ranch was located. He drained his whiskey and left the saloon, his mind racing. If Blackwell wanted his land, that explained the unusual interest in finding Olivia. It wasn't just about her, it was about finding a connection to Preston, a way to pressure him. His final stop was the telegraph office, where he sent a message to an old Army comrade who had become a marshal in Cheyenne. If anyone could dig up information on Blackwell's past, it would be Daniel Cooper. As Preston rode home, dark clouds gathered on the horizon, promising a summer storm. He pushed his horse harder, an inexplicable sense of urgency driving him. The thought of Olivia alone at the ranch, with Blackwell potentially aware of her whereabouts, filled him with dread. The first fat raindrops began to fall as Preston crested the final hill overlooking his property. What he saw made his heart stop. 3 riders were approaching his cabin from the opposite direction, still some distance away, but moving with purpose. Preston urged his horse into a gallop, taking a route that would bring him to the cabin before the strangers. As he drew closer, he saw Olivia emerge onto the porch, shotgun in hand, alerted by the approaching riders. "Olivia!" he called as soon as he was within earshot. "Get inside." She spotted him, relief washing over her face, but she kept the shotgun ready as she retreated into the cabin. Preston dismounted at a run, securing his horse before rushing inside. 3 riders coming, he said, checking his pistol. Could be nothing, but after what I learned in town. What did you learn? Olivia asked, her face pale but composed. "Blackwell's trying to buy land around here, my land, specifically." Preston moved to the window, peering out at the approaching riders. "Think he's using you to get to me somehow?" Olivia's eyes widened. "This is my fault. If I hadn't come here—" "No," Preston cut her off firmly. "This isn't your doing. Blackwell's the kind of man who takes what he wants, one way or another. He'd have come for my land eventually." The riders were close enough now to make out details. Two rough-looking men flanked a third, better-dressed figure whose bearing suggested authority. "That's him," Olivia whispered, her knuckles white around the shotgun. "That's Blackwell." Preston's expression hardened. "Stay inside. Let me handle this." "Preston." "Please, Olivia." His eyes met hers. "I need to know you're safe." She nodded reluctantly. Preston squeezed her hand once, then stepped out onto the porch, his stance casual but alert, his hand resting near his holstered pistol. The three riders halted about 20 yards from the cabin. The rain had intensified, soaking them all in moments. Blackwell, a tall man with a meticulously trimmed beard and cold eyes, surveyed the modest ranch with undisguised contempt. "Mr. Ryder," he called over the sound of the rain, "I believe you have something that belongs to me." "Nothing here belongs to you, Blackwell," Preston replied evenly. Blackwell's smile didn't reach his eyes. "A woman, auburn hair, green eyes. Sheriff Jenkins seems to think she might be in these parts." "Sheriff told me he reported no sign of her," Preston countered. "Jenkins is an old fool." Blackwell dismounted, his expensive boots sinking slightly in the muddy ground. His companions remained mounted, hands resting on their firearms. "I know she's here, Ryder. The question is, what are you prepared to do about it?" "Leave my property," Preston said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. "Now." Blackwell laughed. "Your property? This scrubland will be mine within the month. I've bought every parcel around you. No one will drive cattle across my land to reach yours. No one will buy your beef. You're isolated, Ryder." "Been isolated before," Preston replied calmly. "Suits me fine." Blackwell's expression hardened. "I'm offering you a fair price for this establishment, more than it's worth. Take it and go." "Leave the woman. Not going to happen. Then we'll do this the hard way." Blackwell nodded to his companions. "Burn him out." The men reached for their weapons, but Preston was faster. His first shot caught the man on the left in the shoulder, sending him tumbling from his horse. The second rider managed to draw his pistol, but Preston's next bullet found his chest. He toppled backward off his mount, dead before he hit the ground. Blackwell had drawn a small derringer from his coat pocket, but before he could aim, the cabin door opened, and Olivia stepped out, the shotgun leveled at his chest. "Drop it," she commanded. Her voice steadied despite the rain streaming down her face. Blackwell's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed with fury. "You ungrateful little—" "I said drop it!" Olivia's finger tightened on the trigger. The derringer fell to the mud. Preston quickly closed the distance between them, keeping his pistol trained on Blackwell while retrieving the small gun. "You've made a terrible mistake," Blackwell snarled. "Do you think this ends here? I have men in town, connections in the territorial government. You're nothing, both of you." "Maybe," Preston acknowledged, "but right now, you're on my land, threatening my woman with hired guns. That's enough to get you hanged in these parts." Olivia's eyes darted to Preston at the words, "my woman," but she kept the shotgun steady. The wounded man was moaning in the mud, clutching his shoulder. Preston gestured toward him with his pistol. "Get him on his horse, then both of you ride out and don't come back." "This isn't over, Ryder," Blackwell warned as he helped his injured companion mount. "For today, it is." Preston kept his pistol trained on them until they were out of range. The body of the dead gunman draped unceremoniously over his horse. When they were gone, Olivia lowered the shotgun, her hands trembling now that the danger had passed. "They'll come back, with more men." Preston nodded grimly. "Probably, but not today." He took the shotgun from her and led her back into the cabin, both of them soaked to the skin. Inside, Preston stoked the fire, while Olivia changed into dry clothes behind a blanket strung across one corner of the room. When she emerged, he had coffee brewing and was checking his ammunition supply. "What do we do now?" she asked, wringing water from her hair. Preston looked up, his expression determined. We fight. Against Blackwell and all his men? Preston? That's suicide. Not if we're smart about it. He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. Olivia, I need to know something. If I can resolve this, make it safe for you here. Would you want to stay? With me? Her eyes searched his face. Are you asking because you want me to stay, or because you feel responsible for me? Because I love you, he said simply. I know it's fast, probably too fast. But these weeks with you, I can't imagine going back to how it was before. Don't want to. Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. I love you too, but I'm afraid, Preston. Afraid of what Blackwell will do. Afraid of losing you just when I've found you. Then we face it together. He cupped her face in his hands. I've spent 5 years building this place, making it mine. I won't let Blackwell take it, and I won't let him take you either. Their kiss was a promise, sealing words that needed no further elaboration. When they parted, Olivia's expression had shifted from fear to resolve. What's your plan? She asked. Preston outlined his strategy. First, they would send a telegraph to his friend Marshal Cooper, providing details of Blackwell's attack and requesting an investigation. Second, they would prepare the ranch for defense, creating firing positions and escape routes if needed. And third, Preston concluded, we visit Sheriff Jenkins. With both of us testifying about Blackwell's actions, plus the attack today, we might convince him to act. Olivia nodded, though doubt lingered in her eyes. Blackwell said he has connections in the government. Men like him always exaggerate their influence, Preston assured her. Besides, attempted murder and arson aren't easily overlooked, connections or not. As night fell, they secured the cabin as best they could, taking turns keeping watch. Preston insisted Olivia take the first rest, but as he sat by the window, rifle across his lap, she joined him instead. Couldn't sleep, she explained, settling beside him. Not tonight. They sat in companionable silence, the rain drumming on the roof providing a soothing counterpoint to the tension of the day. Olivia leaned against Preston's shoulder, drawing comfort from his solid presence. Tell me about Philadelphia, he said softly. What was your life like there? Olivia described the bustling city, so different from the Wyoming frontier, the cobblestone streets, the gas lights, the crowded markets. She spoke of her parents' modest home, her father's work as a printer, her mother's beautiful garden. After they were gone, there was nothing keeping me there, she concluded. The city felt empty without them. And now, Preston asked, what would make this place feel like home to you? Olivia considered the question. It already does, in some ways. It's not the place that matters so much as the people in it. She turned to face him. You make it feel like home, Preston. He kissed her then, a tender gesture that deepened as she responded eagerly. The watch forgotten, they made love slowly by the firelight, reaffirming their connection in the most elemental way. Afterward, as Olivia slept in his arms, Preston gazed at the ceiling, planning their next moves. Blackwell wouldn't wait long to retaliate. They needed to act quickly. Dawn brought clearing skies and renewed determination. After a hasty breakfast, they rode together toward Silver Creek, Preston's rifle in its scabbard and Olivia's shotgun across her lap. The journey was tense, both scanning the horizon for signs of pursuit, but they reached town without incident. Their first stop was the telegraph office, where Preston sent a detailed message to Marshal Cooper. The operator, intrigued by their urgent manner, assured them the message would be sent immediately. Next, they located Sheriff Jenkins, who was visiting Silver Creek on official business. He listened gravely to their account of Blackwell's attack. One man dead, you say? Jenkins frowned, making notes in a small book. Self-defense, Preston stated firmly. They came armed, threatened to burn us out. Jenkins nodded. I believe you, Ryder. Problem is, Blackwell will claim you fired first, and his man was just defending himself. We both witnessed it, Olivia interjected. And what about his threats against me? Surely that counts for something. It does, Jenkins assured her, but these things take time. The territorial court won't convene for another month. We don't have a month, Preston said grimly. Blackwell will try again, soon. Jenkins rubbed his chin thoughtfully. There might be another way. I've had suspicions about Blackwell's business dealings for some time. Rumors of smuggling, maybe worse. If I had cause to search his properties, would our testimony be enough? Olivia asked hopefully. Not quite, but I received a wire yesterday from a federal marshal in Cheyenne. Seems someone's been asking questions about Blackwell. Marshall's interested enough to come investigate himself. Preston exchanged a glance with Olivia. Daniel Cooper? Jenkins looked surprised. You know him? Served with him during the war. Good man. Sent him a wire myself yesterday. A slow smile spread across Jenkins' weathered face. Well, now, that changes things. Cooper's due tomorrow. If you two can hold out at your ranch until then, we'll manage, Preston assured him. As they prepared to leave town, Olivia spotted a dress in the window of the general store, a simple blue calico. Nothing fancy, but clean and new. Preston followed her gaze. Would you like it? He asked. Olivia shook her head. It's not practical, and we need to save our money. Especially now. Preston studied her for a moment, then disappeared into the store. When he emerged, he carried a wrapped package, which he secured to his saddle, despite Olivia's protests. Consider it a promise, he said enigmatically. They rode home warily, taking a circuitous route that allowed them to approach the ranch from an unexpected direction. As they crested the final ridge, Preston halted, scanning the property below. Something's wrong, he muttered, reaching for his rifle. Olivia followed his gaze. At first she saw nothing amiss, but then she noticed the barn door standing open, when they had certainly closed it before leaving. Someone's been here, she whispered. Preston nodded grimly. Stay behind me. They approached cautiously. Preston dismounted first, signaling for Olivia to remain on her horse, ready to flee if necessary. He advanced toward the barn, rifle ready. Inside, he found evidence of intruders' feed scattered across the floor, tack tossed carelessly aside, a lantern broken in one corner. But nothing was missing, and there was no sign of the perpetrators. The cabin told a different story. The door had been forced open, and inside, destruction reigned. Their few possessions had been strewn about. Furniture overturned, food supplies emptied onto the floor. On the wall, someone had used a knife to carve a message. Next time, it's you. Olivia gasped when she saw it, one hand flying to her mouth. Preston's expression turned to stone, cold fury in his eyes. We can't stay here tonight, he decided. They might come back after dark. Where will we go? Olivia asked, surveying the wreckage of what had briefly been her home. Preston considered their options. There's a line shack about 3 miles north. Used it last winter during a blizzard. It's well hidden. Hard to find if you don't know where to look. They gathered what supplies remained usable, then set fire to the carved message, carefully extinguishing the flames before they could spread. By dusk, they were settled in the line shack, a crude but sturdy one-room structure built into the side of a hill, with a small corral for the horses. As night fell, they shared a cold meal, neither having the heart to risk a fire that might attract attention. Olivia tried to maintain a brave face, but as the darkness deepened, her composure cracked. I've brought you nothing but trouble, she said, her voice breaking. Your home destroyed, your life threatened, all because you helped me. Preston moved to sit beside her on the narrow cot. Olivia, look at me. When she did, he continued. Before you came, I was existing, not living, had my land, my cattle, but nothing more, nothing that mattered like you do. But your ranch can be rebuilt, is just a place. He took her hands in his. What we have, what we're building together, that's worth fighting for. Olivia leaned into him, drawing strength from his conviction. What happens tomorrow? Cooper arrives, with him and Jenkins. We might have enough law on our side to confront Blackwell properly. Preston's arm tightened around her shoulders. One more day, Olivia. One more day, and then a new beginning for us. They slept fitfully, taking turns standing watch. Dawn came with no sign of pursuit, bringing with it a measure of hope. They ate a sparse breakfast, then prepared to ride to Silver Creek to meet Marshal Cooper. As they were saddling the horses, the sound of approaching riders froze them in place. Preston quickly extinguished their small fire and motioned for Olivia to take cover inside the shack, while he positioned himself at the corner of the structure. Rifle ready, The riders came into view, 4 of them, moving slowly, searching the terrain. Preston recognized Blackwell at their head, his distinctive black coat visible even at a distance. Beside him rode the man Preston had wounded the day before, his arm in a crude sling. 2 new gunmen completed the group. "They're tracking us," Preston whispered as Olivia joined him, shotgun in hand. "Must have found sign of our passing." "What do we do?" Olivia's voice was steady despite the fear in her eyes. Preston assessed their situation quickly. The line shack offered some protection, but they were outnumbered. Making a stand here might mean neither of them survived to see Cooper arrive. "We need to split up," he decided reluctantly. "I'll lead them away. You take the hidden trail we passed yesterday, head straight for Silver Creek, find Cooper and Jenkins." "No," Olivia gripped his arm. "I won't leave you to face them alone." "It's our best chance," Preston insisted. "I know this land better than they do. Can keep them chasing shadows until you bring help." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes, but she recognized the logic in his plan. "Promise me you'll be careful. Promise you'll come back to me." "I promise." He kissed her fiercely, pouring all his love and determination into the gesture. "Now go, while they're still searching. Stay low, follow the creek bed as far as you can." Olivia mounted her horse, the blue package still tied to the saddle. With one last anguished look at Preston, she guided her mount toward the back of the line shack, where a narrow trail led down to a shallow creek. Preston waited until she was out of sight, then mounted his own horse. Taking a deep breath, he rode boldly into the open, firing a shot into the air to attract Blackwell's attention. The response was immediate. The 4 riders wheeled toward him. Blackwell shouting orders to his men, Preston fired again, then turned his horse and galloped in the opposite direction from Olivia's escape route. The chase was on. Preston led his pursuers on a winding path through the rough country, using his knowledge of the terrain to maintain distance while keeping them interested enough to follow. He crossed streams to obscure his trail, doubled back when possible, and used every trick he had learned in 5 years of working this land. An hour into the chase, one of Blackwell's men got lucky. A shot rang out, and Preston felt a searing pain across his upper arm. Not serious, but enough to make controlling his horse more difficult. He pressed on, gritting his teeth against the pain. By mid-morning, Preston had led his pursuers deep into a maze of ravines and rocky outcroppings. He dismounted in a sheltered spot, giving his winded horse a brief rest while checking his wound. The bullet had grazed him, leaving a bloody furrow, but nothing life-threatening. He tore a strip from his shirt to bind it, then continued on foot, leading his horse. Meanwhile, Olivia had reached Silver Creek, her horse lathered from the hard ride. She went directly to the sheriff's office, where she found Jenkins and a tall, broad-shouldered man she assumed was Marshal Cooper. "Blackwell found us," she gasped, dismounting so quickly she nearly fell. "Preston led them away so I could get help. 4 men, all armed. They're hunting him now." Cooper moved forward, steadying her. His face, though weathered by years on the frontier, retained the alertness of a natural lawman. "Ryder always did have more courage than sense," he remarked, but there was admiration in his tone. "How long ago?" 2 hours, maybe 3, Olivia replied, fighting to control her panic. "We were at a line shack north of his ranch." Jenkins was already strapping on his gun belt. "I know the area, rough country. Perfect for an ambush," Cooper noted grimly. He turned to Olivia. "Madam, I need you to stay here while we—" "No," Olivia interrupted firmly. "I'm coming with you. I know where he was heading." Cooper exchanged a glance with Jenkins, who shrugged. "She's got spirit, Daniel. Reminds me of Sarah." Something softened in Cooper's expression at the mention of the name. "All right, Miss Zimmerman. But you follow our lead, understand? And at the first sign of serious trouble, you get to safety." Olivia nodded her agreement. Within minutes, they had gathered a small posse, Cooper, Jenkins, 2 deputies, and Olivia. As they rode out of town, Cooper briefed them on what he had learned about Blackwell. Man's wanted in 3 states under different names: fraud, extortion, suspected murder. Been tracking him for nearly a year. Cooper's gaze was steely. "Today, we end it." Back in the ravines, Preston had found a defensible position, a natural stone alcove with good visibility of the approaches. His horse was hidden nearby, ready for a quick escape if necessary. His arm throbbed, and he was running low on ammunition, but determination kept him alert. He could hear Blackwell and his men searching, their voices carrying in the still air. They had split up, covering more ground, which worked to Preston's advantage. Divide and conquer a strategy he remembered well from his cavalry days. The first gunman appeared around a bend in the ravine, moving cautiously, rifle at the ready. Preston waited until he was fully exposed, then fired. The man dropped without a sound, his rifle clattering on the stones. The shot echoed through the ravines, alerting the others. Preston quickly reloaded, scanning for the next threat. It came from above the wounded man from the previous day, trying to work his way around Preston's position. Despite his injury, the man's aim was true. His bullet struck the rock inches from Preston's head, sending stone fragments flying. Preston returned fire, missing his first shot, but connecting with the second. The wounded man tumbled down the rocky slope, landing in a broken heap at the bottom. 2 down, 2 to go. But Preston had used most of his ammunition, and the remaining threats Blackwell and his last gunman would be more cautious now. The standoff lasted another hour. Preston conserved his bullets, firing only when he had a clear shot. He managed to wound the third man, but Blackwell remained elusive, calling taunts from various positions, trying to draw Preston out. "You're alone, Ryder," Blackwell shouted. "That woman of yours is probably halfway to Denver by now, if she's smart. Or maybe my men found her already. Did you think of that?" Preston didn't respond, refusing to be baited. He knew Olivia would have reached Silver Creek by now. Help would be coming. His patience was rewarded when he heard the distant sound of multiple horses approaching. Blackwell heard it too. His voice took on an edge of desperation. "Last chance, Ryder. Come out now. We can still make a deal." "No deals with the devil," Preston muttered, though too quietly for Blackwell to hear. The posse arrived with surprising speed, Cooper leading them directly to the ravine, where Preston had made his stand. Gunfire erupted as Blackwell's remaining man engaged them, but it was brief. Outnumbered and outgunned, he surrendered quickly. Blackwell himself proved more elusive. As Cooper and Jenkins secured the captured gunman, Blackwell made a desperate attempt to escape, scrambling up a rocky slope toward a hidden trail. Preston spotted him and fired his last bullet, missing but forcing Blackwell to change direction. The businessman scrambled along a narrow ledge, seeking another escape route. "Blackwell!" Cooper's voice boomed through the ravine. "It's over! Federal Marshal! Come down with your hands up!" For a moment, it seemed Blackwell might surrender. He hesitated, looking down at the lawman below. Then his hand moved to his coat, reaching for a hidden weapon. Cooper's reaction was instant. His rifle cracked, and Blackwell staggered backward, clutching his chest. For a suspended moment, he remained upright, a look of genuine surprise on his face. Then he toppled from the ledge, falling 20 feet to the rocky ground below. There was no need to check for signs of life. Preston emerged from his hiding place, dirty, bloodied, but alive. His eyes searched anxiously for Olivia, finding her safe beside Jenkins' horse. "Preston!" She ran to him, heedless of propriety or the watching lawman. He caught her in a one-armed embrace, his injured arm hanging awkwardly at his side. "Told you I'd be careful," he murmured into her hair. Cooper approached, holstering his pistol. "Still getting into trouble, I see, Ryder." Preston grinned wearily at his old comrade. "Some things never change, Cooper." The marshal eyed Preston's bloody arm. "Need to get that looked at. Town doctor can patch you up." As they rode back to Silver Creek, Olivia kept close to Preston's side, as if afraid he might disappear if she looked away. The bodies of Blackwell and his men were slung over spare horses, a grim procession returning to civilization. In town, Preston's wound was cleaned and properly bandaged by the local doctor, who pronounced it messy but not serious. Cooper took their formal statements, documenting Blackwell's crimes for official records. "Man had quite a history," Cooper told them, as they sat in the sheriff's office that evening. "Warrants in Missouri, Kansas, even back east in New York. Been leaving a trail of ruined lives for 15 years at least." "And now it's over," Jenkins added with satisfaction. "What about his holdings in Cottonwood Springs?" Olivia asked. "The businesses, the land he bought around Preston's ranch?" Cooper smiled grimly. Ill-gotten gains. Once the territorial court reviews the evidence, most likely his assets will be liquidated, debts paid, remaining funds escated to the territory. Meaning, I'll still have neighbors, just not Blackwell, Preston clarified. Exactly. Cooper closed his notebook. Which reminds me, Ryder, your ranch house sheriff tells me it was damaged. Preston described the vandalism they had discovered. Cooper nodded thoughtfully. Territory might owe you some compensation, considering you helped bring down a wanted criminal. I'll include it in my report. That night, Preston and Olivia stayed at Silver Creek's small hotel, too exhausted to make the journey back to the ranch. Their room was simple but clean, with a real bed that felt luxurious after the previous night in the line shack. As Olivia prepared for bed, Preston retrieved the package he'd purchased in town the day before. Almost forgot about this, he said, handing it to her. Olivia unwrapped it, revealing the blue calico dress she'd admired in the store window. Preston, you shouldn't have... There's something else, he said quietly. At the bottom of the package lay a small velvet pouch. Olivia opened it with trembling fingers, gasping when a simple gold ring slid into her palm. It was my mother's, Preston explained. Only thing of hers I kept. Been carrying it for years, waiting for the right person. He took her hand. Olivia Zimmerman, I know it's fast, and I know we've been through hell these past days, but I love you, want to build a life with you. If you'll have me. Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks. Are you asking me to marry you, Preston Ryder? I am. His voice was steady, his eyes never leaving hers. What do you say? Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, of course yes. The ring fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her finger. Their kiss sealed the promise, a moment of pure joy after days of fear and uncertainty. 3 weeks later, Preston and Olivia stood before a circuit preacher in Silver Creek's small church. The blue calico dress had been altered by a local seamstress to serve as a wedding gown, adorned with simple lace at the collar and cuffs. Preston wore his best shirt and a new vest, his hair freshly cut and his face clean-shaven. Cooper served as best man, while the schoolteacher's wife stood as Olivia's matron of honor. The small congregation included Jenkins, Miller from the general store, and a handful of ranchers who had come to respect Preston over the years. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Preston's kiss was gentle yet filled with promise. The small crowd cheered as they walked back down the aisle, hands clasped tightly together. The reception was held at the Silver Creek Hotel, a modest affair with good food and better company. As Preston and Olivia greeted their well-wishers, Cooper pulled Preston aside. Got news, the marshal said, keeping his voice low. Territorial court reviewed my report. They're awarding you compensation for damages, plus a bonus for helping capture Blackwell. It's substantial, Ryder. Preston's eyebrows rose. How substantial? Enough to rebuild your ranch house proper, maybe expand your herd too. Cooper grinned. Consider it a wedding present from the territorial government. Later, as they danced to the music of a local fiddler, Preston shared the news with his bride. Olivia's eyes widened. A real house, with more than one room? And proper furniture? Preston added, spinning her gently. Maybe even a piano, if you'd like. I would like that, she admitted. I used to play back in Philadelphia. Then you'll play again, he promised. Our children will grow up with music. Olivia's cheeks flushed at the mention of children, but her smile was radiant. Our children, she repeated softly. I like the sound of that. The rebuilding of the ranch house took most of the autumn. Preston hired skilled carpenters from Silver Creek, and Olivia worked alongside them, helping to design a home that was both practical and beautiful. The new structure had 4 rooms, a spacious kitchen and living area, a master bedroom, a small study that could later become a nursery, and a guest room for when Cooper or other friends visited. By the first snowfall, they were settled in their new home. Preston had used part of the compensation money to increase his herd, buying 20 prime cattle from a rancher moving to California. With careful management, he projected the herd would double within 2 years. Olivia found her place in the community as well. When the Silver Creek schoolteacher's wife fell ill, Olivia volunteered to substitute. Her skill with the children was immediately apparent, and by spring she had been offered a permanent position, teaching 3 days a week. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Preston asked as they discussed the offer over supper. "It's a long ride to town and back." "I'm sure," Olivia replied confidently. "I love teaching, and we can use the extra money. Besides, it's only until—" She trailed off, a mysterious smile playing on her lips. "Until what?" Preston prompted. Olivia reached across the table to take his hand. "Until the baby comes. Next autumn, the doctor thinks." Preston froze, then a slow, wondering smile spread across his face. "A baby? We're having a baby?" "We are." Olivia's eyes shone with happiness. "Dr. Winters confirmed it yesterday when I was in town." Preston was around the table in an instant, lifting Olivia from her chair and spinning her in a circle of pure joy. "A baby," he repeated, as if saying it aloud made it more real. "I'm going to be a father." That night, as they lay together in their bed, Preston's hand rested protectively over Olivia's still flat stomach. "Boy or girl, doesn't matter to me," he murmured. "Just want them healthy and happy." "They will be," Olivia assured him, covering his hand with hers. "How could they not be, with you as their father?" Preston kissed her tenderly. "And you as their mother. Best decision I ever made, riding along those tracks that day." "Best decision I ever made was collapsing there," Olivia countered with a soft laugh. "Safe now?" Preston whispered, echoing the words he'd spoken on that fateful day. "Always safe with me." Olivia snuggled closer into his embrace. "I know," she whispered back. "Home at last." Outside, snow began to fall, blanketing their land in pristine white. Inside, the fire crackled in the hearth, casting a warm glow over the room. Preston and Olivia Ryder drifted to sleep in each other's arms, their future stretching before them, as vast and promising as the Wyoming sky.